one more video of the year. I did finally finish the London Séance Society, so I thought we'd talk about it and to give you something to watch over the holiday break, I guess. So this will be book number 43 that I've read this year. I topped my goal by one. Yay! This book came out in 2023 and it's been on my want to read list pretty much since I heard about it, saw it. It was on one of my challenge cards last year, and then I didn't get to it, but I found it in the library recently and was like, oh yeah, I wanted to read that. And so I did. And I have thoughts. First, let's set the scene. It's set in 1873, so Victorian era. It starts in Paris, but the bulk of the story takes place in London. Lena? I'm gonna say Lena, as opposed to like Lena or Lena or whatever, just because of the way it's spelled, Lenna. To me, that's Lena. She is 23, I think, if I'm remembering right. She has gone to Paris to study with a spiritualist, a medium named Vaudeline, because her sister Evie, Lena's sister Evie, younger sister, maybe Lena's like 26, I don't know. Anyway, her younger sister Evie was murdered on All Hallows Eve, you know, Halloween, the previous year, because this takes place in February, just to give you, like, so it's been a few months. And Evie had been studying with Vaudeline and had been into, like, spiritualism and whatnot. And Lena doesn't really believe in that stuff, but she's kind of, like, desperate to communicate with Evie, find out what actually happened. So, she decides she's gonna study and see if she can find a way to communicate with Evie or find any kind of truth or proof to these spiritualist beliefs, and that kind of thing. Now, Vaudeline had been in London, but also left not long after Evie's murder because she had been warned that it wasn't safe for her there, so she went home to Paris because she's from there. And the book starts with Lena and Vaudeline having like this. They're holding a séance at an old castle somewhere in France. I don't know, but Vaudeline receives a black bordered letter, which is an indicator of a death. She's informed of the death of a dear friend and fellow spiritualist, Mr. Volkman, who was the founder of the London Séance Society, and one of Volkman's underlings is like, we haven't figured out who killed him. Can you come do a seance here? Because Vaudeline's specialty is solving murders by contacting those who have been murdered and finding out, learning the circumstances around the murder and who did it. So Vaudeline and Lena decide to return to London, because it turns out Mr. Volkman died the same night as Evie, so the two incidences are possibly connected. Lena's started to realize that Evie was in fact involved with the Séance Society, kind of in a backward way, because they don't allow women in their society. In fact, Lena and Vaudeline have to disguise themselves as men while they're in London, partly for their protection, partly because otherwise they couldn't get into the society buildings, things like that. So yeah, that's the setup. The chapters are either told in third person limited from Lena's point of view, or first person from Mr. Morley, who is the society member who reached out to Vaudeline. So that's kind of weird because Lena is more or less the main character here. We're kind of, meant to, I think, bond with her. I'm not sure why we have Mr. Morley's point of view. I won't well, if I get to the point where I talk about spoilers, I'll put up my little spoiler thing so you'll know that if you don't want to know the spoilers, you can fast forward through that part. But Vaudeline and Lena also have a kind of a burgeoning relationship. I actually really liked that part. I thought it was well done because we feel kind of Lena's, attraction to Vaudeline, and that I liked the way that part was done. This is a competently written book. It drags in places because it is mostly set over just a handful of days, right? From the time they get the letter to go to London, they spend like a whole day in London just kind of gathering clues ahead of the seance they're going to do for Mr. Volkman. And then, some stuff happens. And then the denouement is kind of weird because you get to the point where you're like not even sure why the seance is going to happen anymore because stuff has, come to light. It's like, why do you even need to do this seance? The seances are the best parts of the book, I felt. The one at the beginning and the one at the end, because Vaudeline's kind of very specific method for seances was interesting to me as somebody who likes things like tarot, astrology, spiritualism in general. I found that part way more interesting than the mystery, because the mystery really wasn't much of one. It was pretty obvious what was going on and what had happened. And so, so as a mystery, I don't think it was very effective. And because I didn't quite connect with the characters, Lena, I don't like Mr. Morley. I don't think you're supposed to. Lena, to me, was a bit drab. There's a lot more about Evie and everything she was doing and stuff like that. And Evie even seemed obnoxious to me, like, as opposed to interesting or, I understand. Your sister, you love them no matter what. But, like, between Lena being very logical and scientific and Evie being very spiritual and whatever, and neither one of them being very actually interesting, Vaudeline was slightly more interesting. There's, a lot of, as you're reading, there's a lot of not sure if you should trust her, and that's kind of an interesting thread through the book. But even still, even if it had been from her point of view or something, I don't know, none of these characters really I just didn't feel anything. I was kind of indifferent to all of them, which I think dampened my feelings for this book overall. I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads. It's more like a 3.35, it's like, it was fine, maybe a little bit better than average, but there was like a lot of potential here that in the execution didn't really work for me. I've never read anything else by Sarah Penner. I guess she wrote a book called The Lost Apothecary that people seem to have liked, and I think there's a couple others. I don't know, like, would I pick up another book by her? Maybe, if it sounded interesting, but I'm not like rushing out to read the rest of everything she's written based on this, because it wasn't that good. It was a little bit of a fun premise, like I said, competently written, but like not blow me away kind of. And like I said, the parts of the book that I really liked were at the bookends, at the kind of the beginning and ending. So the rest in the middle just felt like, oh, just get on with it. It wasn't, I don't know. It was a book that, I think I put this in my Goodreads review. It was a book that, when I was reading it, it was fine. I wasn't like, wow, but I wasn't, hating it. But when I wasn't reading it, I wasn't like super excited to pick it up again. I was not like, ooh, I can't wait to read this, read more, or whatever. I didn't have that feeling for me. And, I want a book that I'm excited to pick up and continue reading, as opposed to one where I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't dislike it enough to stop reading. I was interested enough to see where it went, to see if what I kind of suspected was true, and it was. That part was less exciting. But overall, it was fine. You know, Goodreads said my average for the year was 3.6. After I put this book in, it went back down to 3.5. So, you know, that means my reading average for the year, if I add this in, is probably a bit less than it was before. But this book was, you know, if 3 is average, and 3 is actually, 2.5 would be average, 3 is actually a little, and this, you know, this was 3, like I said, 3.35 stars for me. But yeah. Anyway, if you've read The London Seance Society, then let me know your thoughts, or anything else by Sarah Penner, maybe. Should I read it? Should I read more by her? Should I not? Or, you know, I don't know. I typically like things. I like historical fiction. I like things that have a little bit of a fantastical element to them, but are, you know, grounded in some sense of the world we know, or the real world, or whatever, that magical realism kind of thing. So this should have been exactly my thing, but it just kind of didn't quite get there for me. It was fine. That's kind of the best I can say. I am now reading The Heaven Official's Blessing Volume 2, really enjoying it. Looking forward to talking about that probably in the new year, because I won't be done with it before the end of the year at this rate, with so much else going on. But let me know your thoughts, what you're reading, what you're looking forward to in the coming year, book-wise, movie-wise, anything. And until next time, take care.